Good evening. Welcome to our council meeting for June 25th, 2019. I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ortega.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Lauer.
Here.
Councilmember Thompson. Here. Councilmember Koch.
Here.
Councilmember Applegate. Here. Councilmember Geek.
Here.
All 7 members present.
Okay. Thank you. I hope everyone's enjoying hopefully the warm weather for a little bit. We'll see what happens. So, first, I want to turn it over to Scott to start us off real quick.
Where's my glasses?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I wanted to introduce someone to you who's visiting us for the week. The City of Fountain is hosting one of the ICMA Senior Army Leadership Fellows. There's a program that the International City Managers Association has that matches up deputy garrison commanders from various installations throughout the country, actually throughout the world, with various different communities throughout the United States. And it gives us an opportunity to host a senior leader from the Army in our community and share with him some of the things we're doing, as well as to learn a little bit more about the Army culture and what we can be doing to better our relationships and our interactions with our neighboring installation, Fort Carson. So Justin Mitchell is the Deputy Garrison Commander from Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I'm going to let him kind of introduce himself a little bit more in detail. But he's spending the week with us, and boy, so far it's been a couple days of whirlwind, really good stuff. Had a great opportunity to meet with him on various different things and meet with the community. We've met with NORAD and NORTHCOM. We met with some folks today from Fort Carson about their rail spur needs, et cetera. So got a lot of things going on, but I want to briefly, if I could, introduce Justin to you.
Thank you.
Justin,
Thank you
and I'm
very
just going to hand it over to you.
All right, I appreciate it. So, first, I'm really humbled. I've learned a lot in 3 days. It seems amazing how much I've already seen in 3 days. These people are amazing professionals. One of the things about the military, if you've been around the military, is a commander's coin is something people covet because it means that you've provided something of excellence and in a selfless way to more than yourself. And so my mom always said, beware of a man bearing gifts, but I did bring a commander's coin from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to each one of you for your selfless service in taking care of our soldiers and our families, because for us, that is what we're all about. And so to receive a coin, it's a handshake. I start with it, I shake your hand, turn it over, it's then yours, and you take that coin. Now, the thing with coins is there's a rule of coins that once I give you this coin, you're the owner of it, you must have it on you at all times. If I ever see you again, I run into you in the airport or whatever, I may challenge you and pull out my coin. If you do not have your coin, you owe me the beverage of my choice. If you do have your coin, I owe you the beverage of your choice. So this does come with some responsibilities. I appreciate for what you guys do.
You know, you guys can't put all those coins in your pockets. We'd be really sad around here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sir, thank you so much
yeah.
for what you do for our soldiers and their families.
You guys walked around all those coins in your
God
pockets.
Oh, and there you go.
Oh, look at that. This is bigger. Sir, thank you so much for what you do. I appreciate it. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Nice.
I'm going to grab one.
No problem, sir. How you doing? Fort Bragg. Been in many years.
Outstanding. We should talk. I did want to spend just a second to let you know that Fort Bragg is considered the 5th largest city in North Carolina. It is the world's most populated U.S. Army base in the world. Okay, so 54,000 soldiers, about 163,000 family members, a total served population with retirees and transients to about 263,000. I have 13 access control points. I have a staff of about 3,000 to run the entire base. But the only difference between what Mr. Traynor does and what I do is I am responsible for everything. So for the 1,400 miles of roads, the 20 miles of railroad track, which we only use about 14 miles, I have 17 child care facilities. I have 14 gymnasiums. And we have one of the largest hospitals in the Department of the Army. And depending on deployment cycles, we have between 7 and 9 babies born every day. And so I'm not responsible for all of them, but I'm just responsible for taking care of the community. I have 6,150 homes on Fort Bragg. that houses about 1/3 of my population needs. So 2/3 of my population lives out on the economy, and we count the people outside the fence line and inside the fence line, is that we're inextricably intertwined, where we are your military community and you are our families and our homes, and you are our home. And I know that that's what Fort Carson, I'm sure, feels about you. So I'm going to be here this week. It's been an amazing learning experience already. I told Scott I have probably 10 pages of notes already just watching how he interacts, and he spends much more time than I do, and I'm going to take this from him in building relationships and keeping the ball rolling in so many different areas, and I'm going to steal that from him. And I've watched him speak about taking care of his staff, and then I got to watch him do it. And so I love it when the audio matches the visual, and I'm very impressed with your city manager, and I look forward to the rest of the week. So I'll sit down and be quiet now because I know you have an agenda and I'm not on it. So have a good evening. Thanks for letting me come and watch.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the coins.
Thanks for the words too. And I don't know that people think they know, but until you actually see what Scott and the staff do, it's a lot of stuff. And the knowledge that they have and the things that goes on in their head just amazes me sometimes. And it's a team effort that everyone tries to work really hard at, and moving everybody forward, and leadership across the board. So you'll see that a lot this week too. So thank you for visiting Fountain. Our next presentation is update on public work from the Public Works Department. Ms. Williams.
There should be a presentation in there. Cross my thing. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm patiently awaiting a lovely audio-visual presentation. But I can put words to it up until it appears on the screen. I just wanted to give you an update on some of the public works projects going on currently. Duckwood, as you know, is very constructed and has lovely asphalt and looks like it's about ready to go, except for the fact you can't drive across it because the railroads have to put their crossing panels on top of it. We are currently in the process of trying to prod Union Pacific to expedite that, expedite being 12 months in the making, but expedite it so it's not another 12 months in the making. So that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for Union Pacific to come in, add more ballast to the rail, add the panels, then BNSF can add the panels, then we pave it, then we open it, which sounds simple because I just said it in about 30 seconds, but it's not. Is there any way to make it any bigger? Are we stuck? At least for the audience. Can you guys see it on your screen? For those of you who have your screens on, can you see the presentation? It's wonderful. So, haha. We're getting closer. All right, that's probably good. Here's CNS Road, Fountain Mesa Road. There's Duckwood Road, just so everyone has an idea. Eventually we'll get it to sort of fit the screen, but the reason all these projects are on here is just to give you an idea of the scope, but we're only going to touch on a few of them. Any questions on Duckwood at this moment? Okay, can you scroll a little bit further down? We're going to talk about Link Road. So currently we're in phase 1 of Link Road. That's the purple line right here. Phase 2 of Link Road is going to be a new lighted intersection at CNS and Link Road, and a new lighted intersection at CNS and Squirrel Creek Road. And phase 3 is going to be rebuilding 3 miles of Squirrel Creek Road from Link Road to the Waste Connections landfill. So that is anticipated to start probably in August. We're going to start with phase 3 because we need to do the asphalt now and we can do the concrete later for the intersections. Any questions on those projects?
Repeat that again. So what's starting now?
Squirrel Creek will start first.
Okay.
The intersections will be second.
Okay. And the lights for both?
Lights for both.
When is that going to happen?
Hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay.
But if nothing else, first quarter next year.
Okay.
Any other questions on Link Road? I'm pretty sure if I'm to ask Taylor, Venatucci didn't make the cut on your fancy map, did it? So, Venatucci Boulevard, up by South Academy Highlands. Just a quick update that's not going to be on your map. We have contracted with Wildcat to get that work done. That work should start in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're just working on getting blessings for our girder design. So as soon as we get that, we should be good to go. And that's also scheduled to be finished by the end of 2019.
Where are the stoplights going to go?
There are no stoplights for Venatucci. So Venatucci, where it currently ends at the roundabout, will tie into B Street to the north with a right in, right out.
On B Street?
No, I said where they going to go.
The stoplights for Link Road?
On Mark Shuffle.
Oh, no, there's gonna be one at, Link and Squirrel Creek, as you head out to the dump, and then one at CNS and, Link at the end there.
I think they're just street lights.
Correct. They're just street lights.
No stoplights.
What about on Comanche?
No scheduled for a street light on Comanche at this moment in time.
Why?
Because the fact that we didn't start the Moving Fountain Forward projects till the last 3 years, the amount of money that we have relative to the period in time that we are in does not facilitate constructing all the projects that were on the ballot.
Adverse to Duckwood, there is much more traffic on Comanche.
Let me jump in on this one. Jim, what we've got with those remaining Moving Fountain Forward projects, Indiana's the #1 priority, which we've got about half the funding. Once that's completed, then we'll come back and we'll find out if the second priority would be Comanche or Jimmy Camp and Ohio. So it's all based off of funding at this point. Duckwood is done on our end, so it's all paid for. So once we get that one completed, Indiana will be the next priority #1. And then Comanche will either be placed second or third based off of what your input is. Either way, once we get that funding, then we'll move forward with building it.
Who's doing the funding for
That's
Duckwood?
all coming out of the Moving Fountain Forward money.
You know, I would sure like to see one on Comanche up there. That's so busy. I think you've been with me trying to get out of there. And you can sit for 15, 20 minutes.
You and I have sat there coming over here.
Yeah.
So yeah, as soon as we get the funding in place, we're ready to move forward on it. It's all just waiting for that funding.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions on Venatucci? And an update, we were scheduled to get a traffic signal at Sneffels and Mesa Ridge Parkway in 2019. I'm not going to guess as to why CDOT's funds are gone, but I would say it has something to do with the 2 failed ballot measures last November. But they reprioritized based upon the fact that there wasn't any additional funding passed in November. And right now, the light on Sneffels is not slated to be completed anytime soon. So we wanted to let you all know.
So you're on your own.
Yeah, we're on our own.
Good luck.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Any questions on that or anything else you're just curious about? Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks. No board commission committee appointments tonight, is that right, Ms. Huffman?
That's correct.
Okay, we'll move on to city council agenda requests and announcements. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Did have a couple things. Wanted to see if I could get staff feedback, council's thoughts, maybe suggestions. What I wanted to talk about was more support for our local businesses. And so what I mean by that is that I think it would be a good idea if we could start helping highlight some of the things that we currently have in the city. For example, Todd and I had the opportunity to go to PPIR this week, sat down and met with one of the owners, Bob, for over an hour. And the reason
that I wanted to go and meet with him was because I had the opportunity to go to a event with my son Saturday before Father's Day, where they had car drifting. Now, Bob had indicated to me that he had put in over $100,000 in support of this event. I know Saturday, when I was in attendance, that there were over 3,000 people there. Father's Day, there was over 1,500 to 2,000 people. I had the opportunity to go to both events. And so I do know that he has an upcoming event in which he's planning on sponsoring up to $250,000. And so, you know, I think that there are a lot of avenues and a lot of things that we can do to help people inside the city of Fountain who, I mean, that's phenomenal that he's putting this type of money towards events. And I think if we had links on our city website and also our Facebook site, when we have such events come up, that, you know, if some businesses, and not just that, Thunder in the Valley I know is getting ready to come up, but I think if we could help events such as these by us helping support them by putting links, and PPR has phenomenal videos where they have, in my opinion, put thousands of dollars into having productions, professional film crews come down to highlight exactly what it is that they do. The other thing I would like to bring up is the fact that if you go online and look up malls, you can find the Citadel Mall, Chapel Hills Mall, Promenade Shops at Briargate. I think it would be nice if we also started highlighting Highlands Ranch, because that is Fountain, that's a part of us, that's a part of, Highlands Academy, I apologize, because that's a part of who we are. And, you know, I had the opportunity to speak to a couple neighbors the other day, in which a lot of them did not know the expansion of growth that we've had up there. The new car wash, Freddy's hamburgers or whatever, you know. And so I think at some point we need to seriously consider maybe having a website that can point people to a lot of the phenomenal establishments we have in the city. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem? Yes. If I may. Just on that, just so you know and the public knows on that, we do right now have a master calendar on the website that we have populated with a lot of the larger community events that are in the Fountain area. And when you go into that calendar, it'll even have a link to their event if they have their own webpage. So we do have that. We've also done some news articles on the main page kind of highlighting big events that are occurring, you know, in the month. So in the month of May, for instance, we had several events associated with Memorial Day, and so we kind of highlighted those as well. And we put some of that stuff on Facebook. And then I'd also note that the Chamber of Commerce, the racetrack's a member of the Chamber, and the Chamber, they share their information as well. So I'll certainly look at that.
Right.
Take it for action.
Right.
See what else we can highlight.
And John, I think everything you've done so far is phenomenal. But, you know, when I sit down with a business owner and he tells me that, you know, they've put up $250,000, 100,000 plus for an event. I also know that sometimes looking at television, a lot of these news stations talk about upcoming events throughout, you know, certain parts of the county. And I think we're at that point now where we should really start thinking about showcasing some of the things that we're capable and are doing in the television limelight as well.
And we've started that. And I guess you didn't see my commercial?
Yes.
So, I mean, we've kind of started that door, and I know John's been in contact with a lot of the one of the issues with doing some of that with the big TV stations is the cost. And KXRM actually worked with us, really did it for cheaper than a lot of other, you know, even print and things like that. So they were able to get us, I think we ended up like 50-some times on the TV. You didn't see it at all? No. Oh, okay.
I had the pleasure of seeing you shooting.
But no, it's so we are getting that out there, trying to get out a little bit more, and using our Facebook page And they even talked to us a little bit about how they use their Facebook page to get people to their website and things like that. So I know John's been working on a lot of that too. So if we can highlight some of our own things here in the city, I think that'd be great too. So just as long as it's fair and equitable to everybody.
Yeah. Which I agree with that. Todd and I did speak about that as well too. And of course, I would want it to be equitable and fair to everyone as well.
Yeah.
But also don't forget, you know, I think of something featuring Highlands Academy, you know, a website strictly devoted to that. I think that would be nice as well too.
We can figure something out on that. I think, okay. Mr. Geek,
Nothing for me tonight.
Mr. Applegate?
Just went to CMI, Colorado Municipal League, for this week, for the convention, and had some incredible classes, and you guys ought to go. It's really some good information. And I'll be talking to staff on a few of them, but not here.
Great. It's a neat event. Next year, they're gonna have it in Westminster, so.
Yeah, I'm not
it'll-
going.
Yeah,
In
it'll be in
January.
Westminster, yeah, so. Mr. Koch, anything?
Nothing here.
Mr. Lauer?
Oh, man. Okay, I know I'm not the only one who's noticed, and I think there's a conspiracy afoot. But that's just my own personal theory. These doggone trains. I'm actually so mad about it, I'm on the verge of not even being able to articulate. In the last few weeks, I know of at least 11 times where they've stopped on the tracks, blocking multiple crossings, and as I'm going up 85, 87, there's 4 miles of clear rails and 4 miles of clear track. What can we do? What are we doing? I mean, I've called and harassed a couple guys, and they were not excited about that, but I gave them Todd's name.
Well, you were good to go on harassing them until you gave my name, because I'm doing the same thing. So we're trying. We're trying on two fronts. The number one front that we've been trying on for several months, Brandy mentioned earlier. So we're trying to work with the railroads on getting Duckwood completed. Hopefully that'll help with some of that congestion at Comanche and other places. And we're tying in why are we getting the stops, what's happening, and those type of things. So the basic criteria that we've been given is, and also we're utilizing consultants that we've been using for the Quiet Zone, who are actually retired members of the railroads, both of them. So they know who to call, they have relationships with them, and they're more familiar with how the railroad works than we are. So they're trying to work on both of these issues along with us to try to help get some relief from us. So what we're hearing is the last long one that was brought up last time was what they told us was a mechanical failure. Something that's that long, they say typically is a mechanical failure or an issue with their conductors. So when we
I
talk
might believe
about,
that one.
what's that?
I might believe that one, because I watched one where they sat just south of that crossing for 3.5 hours with the train off, and then decided to move and block the dang thing for hours and hours and hours and hours.
So what we're doing right now is all of those numbers work. Sharon, we just supplied her with some numbers that she's going to get out to some folks that she knows. So the mayor mentioned it last time. It helps when the public calls to these locations and leaves their complaints. If we just do it as staff, they round file it or they put it somewhere. But if they hear, the more people they hear from, the better. So absolutely. So we appreciate everybody going out there. We've talked to them that we're thinking about getting senators involved and anybody that we can from a political side of things. So they're aware of that. We told them we're going to start putting letters together. Our consultant is actually drafting a letter right now based off of Duckwood specifically, but we're going to include these other issues for all of you to sign. So we're moving forward with that. They're setting up a conference call with us. Was that the vice president that he talked about? Having that call with Lane? So this guy's in charge of the tracks that we're going to talk to, one of their VPs. So we're going to do a conference call with him. I also said that identify the location of where these guys are housed, and I'm volunteering to go out for a couple days and knock on doors and have the discussion with people there on the ground. So we're trying to hit it from multiple ways. But we don't want to stop the public from calling and complaining about it. So just because we're doing something, that doesn't mean, please, you stop doing anything. The mayor mentioned it, we want people to keep calling. We're doing everything we can. Troy is looking into different legal aspects of it, but I can tell you this. There's the issues that we have coming up, but we are also trying to get the projects on the railways done. So when we do these things, we're kind of dealing with two specific things. It's not a search and destroy mission because we have to live with the railroad. And there's not a possible way that they're going to start letting us dictate to them how they're going to do their operations. It's building the relationships so when we have issues, we actually have individuals we can call and try to come to solutions rather than just getting voicemails, which is what you do now. So we're going to go it from both angles. We ask the public to continue to do what they're doing. We ask you as elected officials to keep doing what you're doing. As a staff, we're going to work on trying to find the individuals, build relationships with them, and come up with solutions. Because as police chief, as you know, all those calls used to come to me back in the day. So I can tell you this, the only time we did anything effective with the railroad is when we've been successful building relationships with them, not threatening them, not doing anything else, because we have no jurisdictional oversight of them. So as police chief, I did have some positive things once I built those relationships. Right now, we don't have them, so we're going to try to find the right individuals to build those. Because we have nothing we can do to threaten or force the railroad to do anything. We can do citations, we can do other things that were brought up. It's meaningless to them.
And if I may, this is an issue that's been going on in the state. We actually addressed this at CML one time, and what we found is that this happens more often to small municipalities and more in smaller cities versus an area like Denver, et cetera. And so this is a statewide problem. And I know at one point we did have discussions in frustration as some of the smaller municipalities and cities getting together to do a united front, disputing the mistreatment that they give us.
And one thing our consultant did tell us this morning, we had a conference call with them this morning about these issues, is they said, please, because I told them we were going to talk about it tonight, they said, please let your council know this isn't something that's unique to Fountain. They said this is going all over the nation. With the Duckwood project specifically, he gave us a couple of different examples, but one he said out of Houston that mirrors our project. They've been waiting for it for a year, he said. So we're going to do everything we can, but it's always, in my experience, it's been finding the right people, and that's why I think we need to get on the ground and knock on doors rather than just being emails and letters. We need to get in front of people and try to start talking about solutions. So we're going to go down that road as well.
I talked to a BNSFL representative at the CML, and he was talking about one of the things that is clogging that up. And of course, he put the blame off on Southern Pacific, of course, it wasn't him. So, but he was talking about, and when they get their stuff done, then BNSF can finish their stuff. And they're overlapping, and they won't, but the other one just.
And actually what he's telling you is accurate. BNSF has been pretty reactive to us. They're right now waiting for UP to come in to finish their portion, and then they are ready to finish theirs. So whoever you talk to, he gave you accurate information. He's right.
And you're talking at Duckwood.
Duckwood. Yeah. Yeah.
And just so everybody knows, that should have been done by now, is what they originally told us. And now they keep telling us we don't know when it's going to get done. So
the criteria and reasoning that we're getting from them is consistent with what the consultant is getting when he's calling his people. He actually got an email response from somebody while we were on our conference call. And what Union Pacific is saying is, first, they did major layoffs, which affected their timelines. Second, they're saying that the natural disasters that are occurring in the Midwest, being all the flooding of they're bringing in their different regional crews, putting these projects behind those urgent projects. So those are the two reasons. The last I talked to our regional guy a few weeks ago, he told me they'd be out here to finish Duckwood on June 14th. Now that has moved to July 14th. So again, I just think the best, if we can find somebody up as high as we can on their chain and make them aware and start getting answers from them. So we're going to try. We're going to keep trying.
Okay. Anything else, Greg, on that?
But It just occurred to me, and this is how my brain works, so please forgive me. It just occurred to me, I wanted to say thanks for not saying, Greg, we've been working on the railroad all the livelong day.
I would love to have a travel buddy. Anyone that wants to volunteer, I'm game.
I'll wear out some shoe leather with that.
Thanks. Sharon?
Phil, I've been emailing back and forth for about a week and a half with a representative from PPIR and inviting them to come. Sylvia, when are they coming?
The first week of August. Or no, I'm sorry, the last of July, they're coming to City
The
Council.
last council meeting in July, they're going to come promote the Tiny House Festival they're having down there in August. So they're going to come promote that. Is Tamara Estes still here? Her and I have a lunch. We're going to, on July 3rd, a very small group of people with Senator Gardner. So if you have a letter prepared and would like it hand-delivered, we would, on the trains or anything, we would be more than happy to hand-deliver that to him.
Okay. I don't have anything. City Council, we did that one. Public to be heard. Citizens may address council on items that are not on our agenda. We ask you to sign up with the clerk part of the meeting. We may not be able to provide an answer, but we'll direct staff to follow up. And out of respect for the council and others in attendance, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Ms. Meininger.
Thank you.
This is a list of what I did before and suggestions for what we should aim for this time around. Deborah Stone-Weininger, community advocate, citizen scientist. And I'm going to go over what I started to go over the last meeting. When we encountered this train problem that was ongoing for quite a few years, and several years ago when I got stuck for 3.5 hours, from 8:30 to 11:30 at night, waiting as a pedestrian on the wrong side of the tracks, which is by the library, waiting to get across those tracks while the temperature went from 30 degrees to 14 and it started to snow. When I made my calls, and the story I've said before, but I'm going to say it again. When I made my calls, I was talking to different PR people, customer service, and everybody was going, there's a crack in the track. I said, twice a day, every day. I said, I don't think so. My grandfather was a yard master. I know better than that. I said, there's nobody in the train. It doesn't move for hours at a time. So after quite a few calls, I called back the security department. And I said, I know as a security department, your calls are mandatorily recorded. I said, I want to know why these are stuck on the track, stopped on the track, and why I'm getting all these stories. Why is it happening so regularly? And when are they going to get back in the train and move it? Because by this time, it's after 11 o'clock at night. I was told by the security department, he said, well, actually, when their shift ends, their union does not allow them to stay on the train. So they basically park it in the vicinity of where they choose. And then when the next crew comes on, can be anywhere from a few minutes to hours, usually it's hours, then they get in the train and they move again. And when I asked, when is this one going to be moving? And he said, it'll be about 30 to 45 minutes still. And this was like 20 after 11. So by that time I had to go to plan B to find a way to get to the other side of the tracks because I was walking. No buses running this time of night, not at 11:20 at night. Now, the story I've told you before. I'm glad to hear a better attitude about it today than we heard last week. I'm glad to know, I found out in the paper, that we do have, what would you call it? Ordinances on our books about the trains not blocking our crossroads and possible consequences for doing it. They have the right of way to go through them. They do not have the right of way to park on them. And I was glad to hear from the police chief that they were working on it. I handed them a folder with some information, the 4 people who I was told was working on it. And I'm bringing you all this original negotiations from a few years ago, because when I talked to the PR people, I got that no trains are more than 150 cars when stopping on trade tracks within the city limits to the shift change that I just explained. The trains were, the actual protocol is the trains were to be split over crossings with guardrails up and lights off to allow normal passage of traffic. Police department and fire department were to be notified how long unmanned engines and cars were to be parked before new crew comes to take over. This is regularly 1 to 4 hours, once or twice a day. And at that point in time, I was requesting that if a train or track actually had a train or track hazard or malfunction or accident, police and fire department should be notified immediately. That particular step never happened, but at least they did start splitting them across the tracks. At that time, I thought it was because of my work and the request I'd made from our city council. But I was informed at the last meeting that that was unsuccessful when you went to some meetings that talked directly to the train people, and that they said they could do whatever they wanted to, and that was the end of the story. I don't accept that. I'm glad to hear that you're taking a different step now. I don't know if that's because of what people listened to at that meeting, or because of anything else, maybe what people said or called in about. I don't know. I didn't find out what was in the paper with that information about the information about not stopping on the tracks, that the Fountain already had it on the books as a violation. I didn't find that out until about Wednesday or Thursday, but by that time I'd already had this piece of paper made up. And what I'm asking is that the people who are working on it in our city, whether it is a city council or our other departments, like the fire department, or you, Todd? Yes, good. If you're working on that list, I'm requesting as kind of guideline, because the first part of it is what I negotiated the first time way back when. I just didn't realize I was the only one negotiating it at the time. But that was a few years back.
Deborah, real quick, let me address this, because I know the light's flashing. I just want to make sure you know and everybody knows, nothing we're doing right now was initiated after last week. We've been doing all this for years. Your list, I love that you were negotiating or talking to somebody, but all of these steps we have been attempting since I began to be chief back in 2010. So we need to keep working on it together.
Right, that's the whole idea.
Make sure you know, nothing was initiated after last week. This has all been going on, our last council meeting. This has all been going on for years, and it's been continuous, and we will continue to work on it. We'll continue to try every angle we can.
Yeah.
So you keep doing your discussions with them, and we'll keep doing ours.
Yeah, when I was stuck that day on the track, I was told it had been going on for years, as far as the problem goes, and that nothing could be done at that time. I didn't accept that. I had a lot of conversations with those PR people. I still have their phone numbers on my phone that I used to call. And I think I should put that out to the people, because those are actually the customer service people that talk to us when we call in as residents, That I got through the BNSF number, but sometimes you had to know which selections to make. I have reason to believe that the reason it started up again around last May, from what I was checking. Yes, I know, I'm going to be brief.
Way past 3 minutes.
Yes, sorry. That there was a few things that Colorado Springs has been doing, and unfortunately that Fountain is also involved in, that may have triggered it going backwards instead of forward as far as cooperating. One was when there was I think it was orchestrated, an accident on the tracks in the residential area by their yard in Colorado Springs. The other one is the exploring the industrial rail park in southern El Paso County. I was at the meeting back in May of 2018 and BNSF was there. They were not happy about being told that anybody could use their track that runs across the highway because they considered it their piece of track in that meeting. And I'd forgotten about it, didn't think any more about it. But at that meeting, they said they were very unhappy, and they were told by the county commissioners they need to learn to share, and it wasn't their choice. But that is where they go into the Ray Nixon plant area to deliver their coal every day. So they considered it their personal property, basically, that bridge. And they were told they have to share it. They did not like that. And I have a feeling that may have been a part of what was triggered. So in your negotiations, you might offer to include them in that process of the thing rather than making them feel like roadkill, because that's the impression they gave at the meeting in El Paso County in May of 2018.
Okay, Ms. Meininger.
So that was my other thing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll bring you the rest of it tomorrow, next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any other cards. Anybody else?
Gordon Rick, 704 Daffodil. I'll try and be brief, Mr. Mayor. Quick question for Todd. While you are correct, from my understanding, that as a city and the state, we have limited legal options, the federal government has a Federal Railroad Administration that has much more legal power than we do. Have we reached out to them to try and see if there's anything they can do to help us?
We haven't. We're trying to balance it, but if necessary, we will.
Okay. The other thing I would ask that we take a look at is if the negotiations don't go well, that we contact our local independent and Gazette investigative reporters and our local TV investigative reporters to see if they can do articles or news segments to try and put public pressure on the railroad, assuming the relationship doesn't work as a backup. Have we found out why these trains are stopping? I guess the question I have really, is it related to the construction down in Security on the railroad crossings that the county's doing?
No, because they just started that. And I think
24th.
Right. These trains have been stopping since I was a child. Mm-hmm. They've always stopped there. I remember kids getting yelled at because they would go underneath the train to get to school when Lorraine was the only school. So this isn't something that's new and it's occurring today. It's not something that nobody's never worked on in the past. It's something that we've taken seriously since forever that I can think of. And I'm going to reiterate this from the last meeting. And other times I've said anything about this. The trains are going to do what the trains are going to do. There's nothing we can do about it. No ordinances are going to, they don't care. It goes, like you said, it was a round thing. They throw it in the trash. Their legal counsel has even told us that that's not going to stand up in court anyway, so they don't even entertain them. We can cite them all we want. They're just going to laugh at our face. So this isn't a new thing with these trains. It's frustrating. In the last however many years I've lived here in my life, that this, it's an occurrence that we've had to deal with. The thing we have to be careful of is we're still really reliant on those companies because we have projects that need to get done. And if we start going, and I like the idea of going to the newspapers and things, but if we start doing that, it's kind of like Security is wanting to sue the Air Force, even though the Air Force just gave them a bunch of money for their water treatment facility. I mean, there's a balance we need to do here, and we're when it comes to the trains, we're a small puppy. So, I appreciate looking into that for us and doing that. But I can assure everybody we're working on it. It's not that easy.
The reason I asked the question, Mr. Mayor, it seems like over the last 2 months that the amount of times that this is occurring has expanded rapidly. Okay. Yes, you're absolutely correct. It's happened in the past for many, many years, but the frequency seems to be occurring a lot lately. It's increased. And I'm trying to see if there's something that
over the
maybe
years
we as the county or the Colorado Springs or something is doing differently that's causing them to have to stop.
No, because they treat Colorado Springs the same way they treat us. They treat the county the same way. Whatever's happening north or south, it can affect and end up here, just as a chain reaction. And so, and I've seen this happen in cycles where we'll be fine. We won't have a train stop in in weeks or months. And then all of a sudden, I remember maybe 2 years ago, right as school was starting again, they started stopping again right over here at Ohio. And, I'm stuck over here trying to get to work and things. And so it kind of goes in these cycles. And I know, as Todd said, they laid off a ton of people. And then someone also told me the other day that they're now combining 2 trains together. And so you'll see a load of engines, a huge train, and then another load of engines attached to that with another train on the end of it. So, yeah, they're doubling up, and there's a lot of issues across the rail on that thing. So,
Part of what we're going to try to find out is if there's answers to that, if there's an answer to the ebb and flow. We just got to get to the right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If there's something the city, the county, et cetera, is doing, and we can stop whatever it's doing that's causing them, then.
yeah, it shouldn't be, because we're not allowed to even be on their tracks. So,
Shouldn't be,
yeah.
but.
No, I know, I get it. But if there's a semi that gets high-centered on Las Vegas, then that's going to back up all the way down here. And so until they get that off. So apparently this last one that was a long time, there was a true mechanical failure. There was nothing, and we were stuck. So
What I will tell you, my son-in-law works for BNSF in North Dakota, not here. It doesn't have anything to do with it. But, yes. One of the things that the train BNSF looks for is when they swap out crews, they want a flat area that they can drive their van. They bring the crew in by van, drive and drop. And that area at Mesa and Syracuse, that area is ideal for them to do their crew swaps. So that may be a reason, I don't know, but
yeah,
just throwing it out there. Yeah. Apologize for going long, Mr. Mayor.
okay, thank you.
Gordon, they used to terminal out of Pueblo. I worked for the Rio Grande for a long time, and they used to terminal, and the engineer couldn't get out of the cab until they had made contact with the other engineer. So it was done in the yard. Mm-hmm. And consequently, I don't know why these aren't done in the yard. But I know that we do have a problem on Comanche right now, because of the way that they cut the turnoff off. Those people are coming up and they're turning around. We had a wreck there the other day. They're turning around at Rustique and Comanche now. Then,
U-turn?
yeah.
I know the traffic guys have been out there frequently, so Frankie, if you can mention that to them, it's a true fishing hole.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda will be considered routine and will be approved with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen requests. We have items A, B, C, and D. Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to approve the consent agenda, unless anyone has a item they would like to pull.
All right, Ms. Thompson? Second. We have a motion and second for approval. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay. Item 8, old business. 8A, second reading of ordinance number 1733, an ordinance amending chapter 12.04, construction generally of Title 12, streets, sidewalks, and public places of the Fountain Municipal Code by adding a new section 1 of section 12.04.020 and adopting by reference the El Paso County Engineering Criteria Manual and those documents incorporated by reference. Ms. Williams.
Good evening again. Brandy Williams, City Engineer. This is the second reading of this particular ordinance to adopt the engineering criteria manual for El Paso County in our code. Any questions?
Okay, council? Mr. Koch
Motion to approve.
and Mr. Geek.
Second.
We have a motion second for approval on second reading. Please vote.
Mayor Pro Tem. Waiting for your vote. 7 yes, motion carried.
All right, item 9, new business. No items were removed from consent, so we'll move on to 9B. We have a presentation and an update from the Fountain Fire Department. Chief Maxon.
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I've been the fire chief here for a little over 90 days now.
Already.
And so I wanted to share with you a few things that we're doing in the fire department and just give you a general update. So our current status is that we have a fire chief. Our battalion chief, Michael Orr, retired 2 weeks ago. We have our administrative assistant, Jill Grubbs, 5 captains. 3 of those captains work shift work, 48 on, 96 hours off. We have a training captain, and we also have EMS captain in the department. Fire Marshal, Michael Gates, and we have 4 lieutenants. We have 3 lieutenants that they actually all work shift work, but one of the lieutenants is an EMS lieutenant and functions in that capacity. We have 31 full-time employees, 6 part-time employees, 18 per diem employees. Now the per diem employees, I'm sure you all probably know this, per diem employees are designed to plug in for the full-time or the part-time folks when they need time off, so we're able to fill those slots. One of the things in the fire service is that when we have a fire engine, somebody calls in sick, we've got to fill that other person's slot on the fire engine because we can't have the fire engine going around with one person, or an ambulance for that matter. 35 volunteers. Of the 35 volunteers, we have about 12 of them are in the volunteer academy right now that we're sharing with the Hanover Fire Department and the Security Fire Department. Call volume, we had 5,186 emergency calls in calendar year 2018. That is up just probably about 3% over the year before. Not a drastic increase, but over time those small increases are certainly going to catch up with us. It's pretty amazing that we handle that with our 3 engines that we have on every day and our 2 ambulances. So a few things. We have many strengths in the Fountain Fire Department. One of the things that I really saw in my first few days as chief here is we have very strong ownership. We have folks that really truly believe in this city and have stayed in the city for a long time, and they have a lot of ownership, and you can see it how they take care of the facilities, how they take care of the truck, how they take care of the patients, how they take care of everybody in this city. And so that's a huge strength that we have. I met with our medical director, Dr. Hakarayan, early on, and one of the things that I really like to hear is about 85 to 90% of our calls in this day and age are EMS related. And he shared with me, he says, I really trust the medicine there in the city of Fountain. Your paramedics are outstanding. You all have certain protocols that are in use that we don't have in use in some of the other departments. And so that medicine is really cutting edge. So if any of us need it, hopefully we're not going to need the EMS, but if you do need it, it's going to be cutting edge medicine. And we're always looking for ways that we can improve our medicine every single day. We have also, that goes with that, we have the advanced medical protocols, like I just talked about. We have a very strong wildland program where we have 2 brush trucks, but we have probably the vast majority of the department is very big into wildland firefighting. That's going to be our most common fire call that we respond to, and being really good at wildland is good because eventually we can get to the structures and so forth. So it's really a good program to have, and we're really good at it. We have an enormous amount of community outreach. We have a calendar where we go out into the community and are truly part of this community. I'm sure that everyone sees that. That's really a big strength for us as well. We have a progressive, our fire code that we have is just a couple years old. It's very progressive. We want to make sure that we prevent fires from ever happening, since fires are so catastrophic and a big loss to both life and property. So a few of the initiatives that I've started here in the last 90 plus days is that currently all of our fire stations are being paged simultaneously. So if Station 2 gets a call, we've got to wake up Station 1 and 3 as well so they can get their call. And one of the things with our folks working 48-hour shifts is that, if you got a paramedic who, was woken up for a bunch of calls that they need to be woken up for, and they're on their 36th hour, they might be really tired when they handle one of these big calls. So one of the initiatives that we're working on is getting the stations paid separately. So this is something that has been worked on before, and cost was really a big factor. It was going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars to do this for the stations, but we actually found a way. We've got 2 of the stations accomplished so far, and we were able to do it for about $1,500 a station with a special pager. And we don't have the fancy turn on the lights stuff and music that plays like some of the fire stations do, but it at least alerts, and it's going to separate the paging for our firefighters. AVL dispatch is automatic vehicle location dispatch. We're working on a lot of things with El Paso County Dispatch. They are completely redoing our call types and going to 3 different levels of structure fires for staffing purposes. We're going to a couple different medical calls, but the dispatch system is designed so that when we get a call from 911, those dispatchers ask you key questions, and those key questions from the person calling 911 is going to drive our response. And so if you ever see a call where you say it must be a slow day at the fire department, and because everything's out there, it's because probably somebody called in and said it's really bad, and it may have not been really that bad once we got there. So automatic vehicle locator dispatch, that is going to be driven off of our air cards on our computers in our trucks. And so essentially what will happen is when there's a certain call, a certain street, the dispatch center will go and the CAD will look, that's computer aided dispatch, it'll look for the closest available unit. So our engine 3 might be right here by City Hall, and if there's a medical emergency here at City Hall, it's gonna send engine 3 because they just happen to be right here. As it stands right now, dispatch wouldn't know if engine 3 is right here by City Hall doing something, and they would send, our station 1. So this is gonna get the help to the citizens quickly as our units move around. It's a really great way to go with our resources. So that'll be happening in September of this year. We've done a little bit of an update to the fire district boundaries, which I'm gonna talk about a little bit more here in a minute. Cancer prevention strategy. We've updated our volunteer requirements. We've increased communication in the department. We moved an ambulance, as you guys know. We moved the ambulance from Station 3 to Station 2, so we have an ambulance on both sides of the railroad tracks now. And in the future, we'll have another ambulance likely up there at Station 3. Firefighting foam, I'm gonna go into this a little bit more, but going to a firefighter foam that is not as expensive and utilizing it on our fires, because when you have limited staffing, you have the fuels that exist today, we want to use everything we possibly can. And the foam we're going to, the foam we have now doesn't have PFAs in it. It's environmentally friendly, but the foam that I found years ago that is really good, it's cost effective and it works on a variety of fires. I'll talk about that a little bit more. We did a structural firefighting strategies and tactics update. And we're continuing to build great relationships with our mutual aid departments. So the addition on fire department staffing for 2020, the optimum staffing for a structure fire for a single family residential is 16 folks. The most we will ever have on duty in the city of Fountain is 12. So to really do it, and a lot of this is driven by science and experimentation with crew sizes. So we need to help each other out because not everybody is going to have the exact crew size to handle every emergency. So for our really big emergencies, neighbors help neighbors out with mutual aid. And technical rescue team improvements. So I already talked about the fire station paging a little bit and have covered that very well. Automatic vehicle dispatching. This is going to get help to our citizens. I really think faster than ever before, because as the units move around, it's just going to pick up that closest unit to our citizens. Okay, so with the station boundaries. So one of the things that we wanted to do is, as the chief, I really strongly believe in data-driven decisions when it comes to fire station locations, our staffing, what we need to do. So this map that you see here is the 4-minute response times. So in the upper part of the map, you see in kind of a reddish color, that's the 4-minute response times for Station 3. The city limits is in the black outline. So you can see Station 3 has a 4-minute response time well up into the security fire district. We don't respond up there unless they ask us to, but that is reflected here on the map. Station 2, you'll see in the blue there, that's the 4-minute response time for Station 2, and then Station 1 is in the green. So basically where we have talked about this, and this is something that's been talked to me about since I've been the chief here, is that we do need to look at doing a Station 4 in the southeast corner of the city, and this really shows that as well. So here's our 8-minute response time. So ideally, for us to get the first unit on scene within 4 minutes and then everything else within 8 minutes. That's the national standard, but it really depends on the call type. If somebody's unconscious and not breathing, under 4 minutes is super ideal for that patient. We want to be there as fast as we possibly can, and so that's where that time comes in. Really, any kind of fire, getting there as fast as we can, but we also want to keep ourselves safe as the firefighters and getting there safely and not causing accidents or anything along the way. So we have a little bit of a fire station overlap, and so Station 1 and 2 overlap each other by about 40% in the response area. So one of the things that, and I'd like to say a big thank you to Lisa, our IT director, for really putting a lot of work into these analytics. Did a really amazing job in helping us put this together. So one of the things that we looked at was the possibility of moving our Fire Station 2 out east and seeing if we could cover the city with 3 fire stations instead of the 4 fire stations. And so we actually tried 6 different locations in our study to try to see if we could meet response times and did things add up, did things make sense, and we really just could not make it work. As we went east, there was a little sliver of the city that opened up in the middle that was too much of a gap for us to be comfortable with. So as a result of our research, down there right here is kind of an ideal site that we came up with for a future fire station for probably within the next 5 years, closer to the 5-year mark, to be able to cover that part of the city. And as we know, the city is going to grow in that direction. And so that is actually by Link Road and by Circle C is kind of by the Little Ranches area. And so it may not be exactly there because we may not be able to get land there, but it just kind of gives us a marker of where we want to aim having our station in the future. So any questions about any of that before I move on? Okay. So another big initiative is reduction of cancer risk. When I started in the fire service 27 years ago, we used to sleep with our turnout pants right next to our bed, right after we got back from a fire. And so what were we doing? We're sleeping right next to all that nasty stuff on our clothing. So the rule now is that our clothing does not leave the apparatus bay. If your uniform gets dirty, it gets washed. But we never allow any of the protective clothing to be in the bunk room or any of the crew quarters to reduce the risk. So the national NIOSH has determined that firefighter cancer mortality is 14% higher than the general population. And that has a lot to do with just a lot of the things that we're exposed to, the diesel smoke in the bays, the things that furniture is made of today. It used to be made from, cotton and other things, but it's made from a lot of synthetic things these days. And so those are some of the factors. So just a few of the cancers, firefighters are at 10% higher risk of lung cancer, 30 to 45% for gastrointestinal, 29% for kidney, and 100% for mesothelioma. So one of the things that we have done now is we have put sunscreen on all of our trucks. And so because you never know when you're gonna be out in the sun, so we have sunscreen on all our trucks as of today. And so last week we ran through all of our shifts and really just talked about our strategy to reduce our risk to keep our folks safe so they can retire one day and be with their families. Decontamination wipes, there's these gigantic wipes that we have them come in to where you can wipe yourself off after a fire. And we found that the exposure for firefighters is we wear a hood to a fire, and we would always hang this hood around our neck. What we were doing is breathing those contaminants in. So it's a lot about changing our behavior and our culture. And before I go any further, speaking of culture, we have Dr. Burton Clark here this evening, who's back here. And he's here from Maryland, and he'll be doing a presentation on fire service culture, which everybody is invited to tomorrow night at Fire Station 1. Doing gross decontamination after fire scenes. So this is a huge culture shift in the fire service to be doing these things, but these are the right things to do. So gross decontamination is essentially, if I had on my turnout suit, I would basically they would get the hose line from the truck and they would wash me down in a gross decom procedure. So it's to get a lot of the larger contaminants off as much as you can at the scene. And then when we get back to the station, the gear is going to be laundered. A lot of the departments in the country are trying to go to having a second set of turnouts for the firefighters when the first set of turnouts gets dirty. That's really costly prohibitive because we pay $2,400 for the pant and coat right now for our suits. So times as many firefighters as we have, you can see it gets to be. So we have trash bags on the trucks, and we're gonna start washing folks' suits. But one of the things that is an issue is that they've got to have their firefighter suit available to them for the rest of their shift. It's not like you can, so we've got some things that we're working on to address that. So our volunteer program, actually I've got a number off there. It's actually over 30 volunteers as of June 1st, 2019. So what I discovered is that 95% of our volunteers here in the city they're doing it to get their certifications and to get into a fire department. If we have a vacancy, it's always best, I believe, if you have somebody on the inside as an internal candidate to take your internal candidate because we already know them and they've been through our training. But that's 95% of our volunteers. They provide a very valuable service to our city. They save us a lot of tax dollars. And the national average is that you'll get about 4 years out of a volunteer firefighter before they move on to another, a career or I think we have 3 of our 30 that are here and doing it to give back to the community. And they all do it to give back to the community, but I think the biggest driving factor is get their training, get their certifications. They are required to currently work. We're changing it to 3 12-hour shifts a month and 16 hours of training every month. So it's a pretty big commitment to be a volunteer in our business. One of the things that I want to do is increase the volunteer incentive program. What that does is that gives them just a little bit of, it's a stipend, if you will. So they're not paying out of pocket to drive down to the station for a shift. They have out-of-pocket expenses, and that is something that has been instituted throughout the United States to try to give them a little bit of. So for right now, if somebody goes to training, they get $5 as just. It's kind of really just to offset their expense, so they're not paying a whole lot of money out of their pocket to be a volunteer firefighter. And then one of the other things too and this is all budget driven, of course, but our volunteers are having to buy a lot of their own uniforms. And I can understand why that was the practice, because sometimes we get folks that come in and we buy them uniforms and then they leave. And then what do we do? And so I think there can be a hybrid of, getting them their uniforms and not having them pay for them and not, having the city lose a lot of money. But I hate to say, will you please come volunteer for the city of Fountain? By the way, you've got to pay, a couple $100s to buy your own uniforms. It's a tough sell. increase department communication. So something that I've started doing here in the city of Fountain versus where I retired from before is emails. We all get so many emails every day that we're almost desensitized to it. And so instead of sending out fire chief updates every couple weeks in email form, what I would find is people would come up and say, "Hey chief, how about those cancer prevention wipes?" I was like, "Well, didn't you read my email? It's in the email." "Oh chief, I meant to read your email." So what I'm doing is every 2 weeks, I'm meeting with every shift. I'm going through a standard list of information with them and doing a really good face-to-face meeting instead of those emails, and that's working pretty well. Okay, we already talked about the ambulance moving. And I also just wanted to point out that all of our fire engines have a full complement of EMS equipment. So if that is the closest unit to a medical emergency, it's going to get dispatched, and then the ambulance will be coming behind it. So firefighting foam. I view our gasoline depot right down the road here as one of our biggest exposures. If that catches on fire, it'll be fairly catastrophic. And so what I want to do as the fire chief for the city of Fountain is get us set up to where if the whole thing catches on fire, it's going to burn for a long time, and they're going to have to call in specialists because we can't possibly get enough, flow enough water, enough foam or anything to deal with that. But my goal is the likelihood of having a fire or something happen when they're unloading from the rail cars or into the 18-wheelers. That's where you're probably going to you could have a spark or you could have something happen. So my goal is to get there and keep it small before it gets big, and so that we're equipped to handle a small to medium-sized fire before it gets big. Part of that is using firefighting foam, which helps us. When you use just purely water on a gasoline fire, the gasoline floats on the water and you make your problem much worse. But with the foam, it actually acts to help suppress the vapors and put the fire out. Firefighter efficiency. When we use foam, it reduces the chances of a rekindle and having to go back a second time because the fire started up again. Nobody likes those, especially us. So foam really helps out with that. The other thing that it does is if you go into a room and you put water on the fire, the water just runs off the wall. Whereas if you put foam on that wall, it sticks and it penetrates into that wood and it gets that fire to go out quickly for you. Structural firefighting and tactics. We have found that buildings burn 8 times faster and hotter than they did several decades ago. So for firefighters, our understanding of building construction, how things are put together, and understanding fire dynamics is critically important. They take off so quickly versus decades ago that by the time we get there, we're really behind the 8 ball. So our strategies and tactics have to adapt for that. And one of the things is darkening down the fire before we ever even go inside the structure if the conditions are right for doing so. So a couple weeks ago, we put everybody in the department through a modern fire tactics class, and we have a makeup for everybody in a couple weeks for anyone that didn't do that one. It went very well, went through a lot of basic fire science, and we are also adapting our standard operating procedures to incorporate those modern fire tactics. Relationships with neighboring fire departments, working with them. We are doing the Joint Volunteer Academy right now. That is working really well because we split the workload about 1/3 for every department in teaching the academy. And we're building those relationships because we all need each other when it comes to these really big calls. Technical rescue team, as it stands right now, we only have 1 Swiftwater technician in the department. And we really need more than that to handle Swiftwater. Now, we don't have a lot of raging rivers around here, but if you have flooding or you have water moving at all, that's where this stuff really comes in handy. So we are going to do 10 additional Swiftwater rescue technicians in August. We're going to partner with Security Fire Department in doing this class. They're going to do 10. We're going to do 10 and put it on the class. So it reduces everybody's cost in doing so. Evaluating the effectiveness of having a dive program. The only times that we've used our dive program here in the last, as I understand it, 10 years was to recover police evidence, a firearm out of a pond. And that I mean, it's a very very expensive to run all these extra programs. So we're doing a kind of an analysis of, is that really what we want to be doing as the city of Fountain and having our dive program. We also only have one person certified in the dive program as well. So future initiatives, my big thing as the fire chief is that our firefighters are our biggest investment that we can make. And so I want to make sure that they have the right training, the right education, the right equipment to come out here and serve all of our citizens. And it's my belief that if we take great care of the firefighters, they can can take care of our citizens for the emergencies. We're going to have our first Community CPR Day this fall. Looks like October, and this is where we get citizens in the masses and we teach them CPR at the fire station. And so I'm working with our medical director on that. I'll have final details here in about 2 more weeks, but I think that's just really great to start that chain of survival for CPR, and we can get the citizens in. It can be it's a very important thing, but we can make it to where that valuable skill is taught to a lot of our citizens. The thing that we have found in the United States, well, pretty much worldwide, is that hands-only CPR is, and that's what I want to go to for the citizens, is hands-only CPR, because what happens is when people are overly excited, they tend to overinflate folks when they try to do the rescue breathing. So the hands-only CPR is what I'd like to do for our citizens, because you're circulating blood around. It may not have a lot of oxygen in it, but at least it's something, and has been proven to be very effective. Community smoke detector program, and identifying our areas where we really need to be looking at smoke detector placements in our public housing. Majority of our fires in buildings, they happen in residential structures. And that's something the fire service as a whole has always struggled with, and that is all of our fire codes that we typically, that we do enforce, a lot are for the commercial buildings, but we do very little for the residential buildings. That's driven a lot by the building codes and whatnot. So going to those smoke detector programs and helping folks that are really the most vulnerable, and making sure that they have an adequate smoke detector. Additional focus on behavioral health. I put in the book that I gave you guys this evening, this brochure that I made a while back about when you have a bad call and putting yourself back together again. Unfortunately, every year, the suicide rate in the fire service is, and EMS service, it's more and more every year. We're learning more and more about it every year. And it's something that we need to be on top of and really help our folks so that they can be in excellent shape to take care of our citizens. So it's kind of a pretty big goal, but I hope that we will be able to take our community to an ISO Class 2 in 2021. Some of our things that we've got to work on is fire hydrant testing from a staffing perspective. And when we did the last ISO here, which was a Class 3 in 2013, we missed the Class 2 by about 9 points. So I really think that we can do so. So ISO is on a scale of 1 to 10, the best as you can possibly have, and 10 is no fire protection at all. So even at a 3, we're doing okay. But what does that mean? That means lower insurance rates for our businesses and for our residents. The better we can get. And it is 40% water supply, 50% fire department, and 10% Howard dispatch. Those 3 things have to work together in an algorithm for us to have the best possible rating. So with that, that's all I have. Any questions that I can answer?
The Home Safe program that the fire department, the police department just implemented, when you go on a call, does that information come up in your screens too?
I'm not real familiar with the Home Safe program.
It just lets us know if there's a disability in the house, what type of disability, what are their triggers, and things like that.
Okay.
So, and I would assume that they would have access to it because dispatch has it. So all the information is funneled through dispatch, so dispatch will be able to get fire out there.
And I'll make sure we do.
Yeah, I think that would be really important, if you were going to a household and say sirens and lights triggered someone to make the situation worse.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll definitely check into that.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, thanks, chief.
And then I have the next
A
one
lot of
too.
stuff, yeah,
Yes. So we're busy, but we're doing great things for this community.
great, thank you.
And then I think the next one is me too, isn't it?
Is it? Okay. So let's go ahead and do that one real quick. Is that one a quick one or not?
It should be, unless there's a lot of questions.
Okay. Where are we on a break? Do we need a break, or do you want to go ahead and move on and we'll take a break after this one? Okay, we'll do item 9C, Resolution 19-041, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fountain, Colorado, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Wellness Wishes, Inc., as described in Exhibit A attached to this resolution in El Paso County, Colorado, and prescribing details in connection therewith. Mr. Maxon, or Chief Maxon.
So as you're aware, we currently operate ambulance service here in the city of Fountain. Our collections rate is a little over 60%, which really, if you look at the national average, we're doing very well. But hey, we always want to do better than national average. And so this is this nonprofit, Wellness Wishes. What they do is they have an algorithm specifically built to help us where insurance claims are denied. So when we bill an insurance company, there may be a variety of reasons why they deny that claim. It may be a coding issue. It might be, there's just a variety of reasons. They may have changed the rules on us and not told us, those types of things. So Wellness Wishes has an algorithm built to where they go and they help us get those insurance dollars that we were denied. It's not a collections agency where they go after the citizens. This is just helping us go and get insurance money that we have billed for our ambulance bills, but we're not currently getting that money because there's a technicality or something's going on with one of the insurance companies. There is no fee to use them. What happens is the money they recover for us, the money comes back here to the city of Fountain, and then anything that they help us find, they keep 50% of the proceeds. So that money, we're not getting any of it now, but we would be able to get 50% of everything that they find. My estimate is, we might pull in $50,000, $75,000 a year, which would greatly help us in utilizing this. And with us this evening is Greg Brown. I don't know if Mr. Brown has anything that he'd like to say.
Yes, thank you, Council, for having
Yeah,
me.
come on up.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Greg Brown with Wellness Wishes, and the nonprofit is based out of Ohio, just to give you an idea of where we're at. How I came into this, I like to give a little of my background because I think it's important to develop just the element of trust, more so of why I do what I do and how I got involved. I'm a retired Colorado Springs firefighter. I know I don't look like I should be retired. I got injured, ended my career after about 10 years. And that's just the way things went for me, and I was very fortunate to join up with this nonprofit. So just as Chief had said, what we do is we have a software system that has been built with an algorithm in place that targets this specific process. And how this began is the nonprofit's been around for quite some time. Erin is the name of the president. She started this back in 2011. Her friend is a software engineer who's been developing this stuff for 30 plus years. They were specifically focused on hospital systems. Reason is, just to give you an idea of the dollar amount that goes missing, last year they calculated roughly $125 billion. That's what went missing that was booted back from big insurance companies. So what we are specifically focusing on is the money that insurance companies are improperly denying or just simply not paying. And they do that because it was a big problem in the hospital systems. Like I said, $125 billion. To give you an idea, I can't use specific departments just because of privacy reasons, but let's just say a city the size of similar to Tampa, one I was familiar with. And now this is not their numbers, just again, privacy reasons. We haven't worked with Tampa, but I have an idea how they operate. Let's say they bill out typically $100 million, somewhere in that general range. So as Chief said, the national average is right around 65% right now, depending who you ask, what numbers you look at. So we'll just say that they're getting back roughly 65 million. What our software has been able to do right now, we have an average of uncovering about 23% of those underpayments and improperly denied funds. So that means of that additional amount that's gone missing, we're able to capture on average 23% of those funds. Now that can fluctuate. I can't promise a number. We range anywhere from 10 to 35%, but I can tell you that our research has found 1 in 5 claims are kicked back improperly by insurance. They have software systems designed to make sure they do not overpay you. That, not to talk badly about health insurance, that they are there to help us, but they're also there to save money where they can. They make their money off premiums and not paying as much as they possibly can. And unfortunately, sometimes these systems don't always work in our favor, or a fire EMS agency's favor. Definitely hasn't worked well in a hospital system favor. So I don't want to take too much of time here myself, but is there any questions you guys have for me? I know, real quick, I know Chief did mention there is absolutely no cost to you whatsoever as far as upfront. So if we come in, we do nothing, we get nothing, you pay us nothing. We do this solely as a nonprofit. It's a 50-50 split. Whatever we get back goes to you. We invoice 50%, but one element I want to add in is by partnering with us as a nonprofit organization, what we do is we take that 50% money we have and we take 10% of our share and give it back to the state that we're working with. I'm currently working in multiple states all over just because of my history as a firefighter. So we have separate funds set up for each state. So those of you that partner with us in the state of Colorado, at the end of the year, we've got one big fund of our 10%, and then we give it back for the things you need, again, just as a donation, as a nonprofit. Whether that's, what I love to see is if we can help you add personnel or change dispatch, all the things that I know affect a firefighter because I live that life. I mean, that's why I do what I do right now. So anything we can give back to help your city from a fire EMS standpoint is why I'm here. So any questions you have?
You may have answered it because my question was on the very last thing about the first responder fund. So qualified first responder departments are ones that are working with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then is there a process to apply for that at the end of the year, or are you just evenly?
Yes, there will be a process to apply, and we're going to take that. I mean, we're going to split it up the best we can. If we have, let's say, 20 departments in the state of Colorado, we're going to look at what it is you apply for, what it is you're looking to use those funds for, and then we split it however we can as far as need. But yes, that's where it goes to, and it would be at the end of the year. The reason we set it up that way too is because unfortunately there's some cities that don't allow them to do that. A good friend of mine who's a fire chief down in Florida, actually, his city, they have a statute that limits him. He's not able to take a donation. So that's why we set it up as an application based. I'd love to just show up and hand you a check, but we have to put it on paper because of those elements to give everybody the same right.
Okay, we'll be on top of that, I'm sure, right?
Mr. Geek, how many departments are you involved with right now?
Right now, let's see.
Here in Colorado.
Here in Colorado? Give me just a moment. It's been a busy month. Bear with me. I believe 12 right now in the state that are at the stage where you all are, where we're reviewing the agreement. This is very front end for fire EMS. I want to mention that the nonprofit started this year for fire EMS, which is why I was so excited to get the phone call. They've been doing it with hospitals for 5+ years, but she wanted to reach out because a big part of what we do as a nonprofit is for first responders. We do classes on health and wellness, cancer prevention, suicide prevention, all of the above to take care of the people that take care of us. So they recently came up with this for the fire EMS side because they have not found a downside in the hospital world. There's never been an issue. The software is so locked in and dialed in that in a security standpoint with HIPAA, because we're worried about that always, they are second to only Amazon. That's the only company that beats them in security. The software has never had a breach.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
So, Mr. Mayor and councilors, if you do want to entertain a motion this evening, our city attorney would like to add something to it.
I just wanted to mention I was out at CML conference last week and I hadn't had an opportunity to review this contract. There are a couple things, and I haven't mentioned it to you either yet, that I just wanted to go back and forth. So this may not be the exact version of the contract, but nothing will materially change. And that's, I just wanted to run that by the council.
So we could still make a motion and everything tonight?
Yes, I would suggest you make a motion with that caveat, that it could potentially have non-material changes to be approved by the city attorney potentially, would be the motion that I would suggest.
And when should I sign or wait?
Until me and I'll give Sylvia the final copy and let her know that it's ready to be signed.
Okay.
And I think that as it's written now, it has a city manager to sign.
Oh, does it? Okay.
If I'm
Okay.
not mistaken, yeah.
Giving Scott the ability.
So you're basically giving Scott the ability to approve it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, any other questions? Okay, what would council like to do? Ms. Thompson?
Move to approve pending any changes Troy might make that don't really matter. Does that cover it?
I have
Sylvia
a
can
motion.
Fix it up.
Mayor Pro Tem. Second. And we have a motion and a second for approval. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, we're gonna, thanks, Chief. All right, we're gonna take about a 3-minute All right. We're going to move on to item 9D. This is the presentation of our single hauler proposal. Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for hearing me out this evening. This is an idea born of our roadway focus group here in Fountain. Many of you have heard about this idea, whether or not you've seen this presentation, I can't remember. But it's an idea that came about that, honestly, that I get really excited about, not only as a member of city staff, but as a Fountain citizen, because we've got a serious problem in this city, and that's what I want to talk about, and how we can solve the problem, or how we can start to help solve the problem. For council and members of our community, this picture should come as no surprise. It's a little small on the screen, but what you can see, and here's a better one, is the damage here on our city streets. I mean, this happened, the streets are dry, but look at this puddle here. And what you can see is this is a trash route. This is a residential trash trucks coming in and out of this street and stopping their brakes and digging into the asphalt on the street and causing this. And you might be asking, hey Troy, why do you think that it's trash trucks and not every other vehicle driving on the road? Well, you can see this is the route they come down. They stop on the side. They collect trash from each side of the street, and then they continue on their way. They don't come back down this side of the street. And so you can actually see that one side of the street is significantly worse than the other. And the only explanation for that is these giant, heavy trash trucks. So this is a picture of any potential city street in our community. And so we've got 7 different providers of trash. So this is on a weekly basis. Waste Connections will touch every street in our city. Best Way Disposal will touch every street in our city. Springs Waste Systems, every single street. Waste Management, Waste Systems, Rocky Mountain Disposal. So in a given week, all of these city streets will have different trash companies running over them throughout the week. This could be your average city cul-de-sac, maybe even one that a certain city attorney lives in. And so I'm going to do some math, so hang with me. On my cul-de-sac, there are 8 houses, and conservatively, let's say there's 4 trips a day of the average car. I drive in and out, my wife drives in and out, times 7 days a week. That's 224 passenger trips per week. That's what should be happening in my cul-de-sac, 224 passenger trips a week. One trash truck, depending on the load, you can find different studies, but it's about 1,300 passenger trips per truck that travels on a street. Some estimates as high, if the truck is really full, it can be the equivalent of 9,300 trips. That's cars, SUVs per trip. That's what the wear and tear of a trash truck does. So let's do some math. Okay, these are 2 of my neighbors. They have the same company, so that's 1,300 passenger trips. Another 2 people have another trash truck trip a week. One more. We're getting up, that's 6,500 a week. So a total of, when I walk out my front door on every single day of the week, I have different colored trash bins sitting in my cul-de-sac, no matter the day of the week. And it is equivalent to 7,800 at the minimum vehicle trips per week, when there should be 224. And at the maximum, if those trucks are heavy, it could be as high as 55,000 trips per week. And I bet you're asking yourself, well, what about recycling? Okay, double it, right? Because recycling trucks come as well. So that is, at the minimum, 15,600 trips per week that are coming on my tiny little cul-de-sac. And maximum of 111,000 trips per week. That is an outrageous number. There's no other way to say it. And you can see the damage on my cul-de-sac that shouldn't have any traffic at all. So, okay, so this is the problem. What's the solution? And that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to kind of, the idea has been thrown out there to council, but this is sort of making it public, and we want to start engaging the public in a discussion of this solution. And the solution is choosing one provider, one trash company to serve the entire city. And it's a big undertaking, but if we can do it, it could have a ton of positive impacts for our community, primarily which is the reason that we would like to do it is that reduces the damage to the city streets. But it has a lot of other benefits. It's less trash trucks on the road. A lot of other cities statewide have done this to reduce the environmental impact, to reduce our carbon footprint. Can you imagine the amount of gas that's pumping out with all those trips that I just put up there? It allows us to encourage recycling, because what we can do is provide and come to a standard service across the city that allows people to recycle. Right now, they probably have to opt in, and maybe they can't afford a recycling bin. But we can create a program at which they can have a recycling bin that they've never had before, and we can improve our environmental impact by recycling more. Cans that citizens are throwing in the trash, if they have a recycling bin, they can throw in the recycling bin now. How many people love waking up to the noise of those Jake breaks that go by your house every single day? So there's this nuisance impact, the noise, the smoke. When in reality we can cut all the nuisance by a sixth or a seventh of what it is right now. Ultimately, we can save you money. We can save the citizens money, because right now, when you move into the city, you just call a trash provider and sort of hope you get the right price. Maybe you call a couple, but they're not really actively competing with each other. And so what we can do is offer one contract that covers the entire city, every residence in the city, and we can pick the absolute best price and best value to the city. And because one company knows they can get the whole city's contract, they're going to give us the absolute best price. And hopefully the numbers will bear that out as we go forward. And what we've seen statewide when cities do this is a part of that contract could be a trash hauling infrastructure investment in the community. That these trash companies can recognize the damage that they're doing to the city streets and pay an infrastructure investment fee to the city to help maintain the roads. Cons, I want to present a complete picture here. And the reality is we don't have a ton of smaller local trash companies, but we are only talking about a single hauler to handle the waste for the residences. This doesn't affect businesses. This doesn't affect large multifamily apartment buildings. And so, which is what we find a lot of sort of the mom and pop trash companies, which we really don't have a lot of here in Fountain, serve. And so I don't believe that's a huge impact, but that's what other communities have seen. And it takes away your choice. And I say perception of removal of the choice because this doesn't stop you necessarily from choosing a different trash provider. It just says that you have to use the one that the city uses. So those are the ideas. And I want to talk about next steps with the council. And you're going to hear in a moment about the potential partnership with Fort Carson and the ICSA program that the city's looking into. And it may be possible that we can partner with them in providing trash services as well. And so the next step will be, we'll try to promote this date a little bit more than we've promoted it tonight. But July 17th, the Roadway Focus Group which has really been the driving force of this idea. I just like talking about it because I get fired up about it. But it's really the Roadway Focus Group's idea. And so at their July 17th meeting at 6 o'clock here at City Hall, we want to make open to the public and to really flesh this idea out, talk to the members of the public to see if they've got concerns, and really have kind of a town hall about the idea and discuss impacts and how it would look. I'm hoping to have numbers. I'm hoping to have numbers from various trash haulers to see exactly how this would benefit the city residents and the money that they could save. And so that's the hope that on July 17th at 6, that would be a good time to give the citizens information and to really move this project along. And then the next step would be the council approving a resolution and then giving us time to give that resolution notice to the citizens that the rollout will be happening and that they'll have to switch trash providers. And so that'll start the beginning process of working to move this city. So right now, this is just on the path towards that idea, and there's some steps that we still have to go. But at this point, is there any questions for me?
Yeah, can you just clarify that last point on because this is where I get confused too, because that's kind of the only argument that I always hear about this, is you're taking my choice away if I want to choose a different company. How does that work again? What did you say there?
It's we've toyed with the idea of doing it different ways, and the ultimately question is, how do you enforce a single hauler? And the way that we've talked about it is using a permitting system to basically, as a part of a single hauler contract, that company would be able to have their contract would be their payment of the permit system, and then permitting any other company that wanted to be operating in the city of Fountain would have to pay a permitting fee. And having other big trucks pay a permitting fee. And so the natural course would be the trash companies that have to pay a permitting fee would be more difficult for them to do business in the city, quite honestly. And that's how we enforce one company having all the residences. So you could theoretically hire a different trash company, but it's going to be more expensive for them to operate in the city, and you're going to be paying a lot more for them.
So if the city goes with company A, but I've used company B ever since I had a house.
Mm-hmm.
If company B chooses to pay the permitting fee, I may end up paying more because they're going to have to offset their costs on that. But
Exactly.
they'll still have that option.
Yes.
If that company decides they want to.
Yes.
Own it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the way it works in those other cities? Now, locally, I think Manitou uses it. Anybody
Manitou
else?
does, yeah.
Locally?
Locally, I don't believe so. Colorado Springs does not. Monument does not. Honestly, a lot of what we've seen are the more progressive communities, I'll say, because of the environmental impacts.
So like Boulder?
So yes, Longmont has it, Lafayette has it, Brimfield has it.
Not that there's anything wrong with Boulder.
Not that there's anything. I actually don't know if Boulder has it. And what you've seen that because of the environmental impact, and a lot of times, this is maybe too much information about those municipalities, but what they've done is they've manipulated the numbers to encourage less production of waste.
Right.
So what they've done is said, okay, if you get the tiniest trash can, it'll be really cheap, but if you get a giant trash can, it'll be more expensive. And they use that to try to encourage less waste. Honestly, I can speak confidently that that's not really our community, that we are after getting the absolute best price across the board.
Right.
And so that's what Manitou did specifically, and that's what, that's what their motivation was as well.
Okay. Yeah, and it does work though, because the company I used prior to our move, because I'm big on recycling, so I said make sure we get someone that has recycling, and they gave us the huge big dumpster, and we were only able to use a small little canister for our trash, and I thought there's no way, but we often filled the recycle bin all the way and rarely had that much trash, and they would charge me for the extra trash, and we never ran into that other than Christmas time. But with all the other extra junk that we get, but I like the idea. You see the trucks, and I was explaining this to my kids the other day. I don't know why we were talking about it, but every time they hit those brakes, they're pushing that asphalt, and that's what makes it look like that. It just makes it 10 times worse. And so I think the idea is really neat. And if it saves money, why not?
Yeah.
Okay. So the meeting on the 17th, the Road Focus Group is going to host that. It'll be here. Okay.
Okay. Any more questions?
Any more questions?
Oh yeah, public questions.
I was going to ask something about the recycling now. Now basically all we can do is just throw away the bottles, the clear bottles.
And Mr. Rico, you're going to have to.
And the such, okay?
Yeah, come on up.
Oh.
What I'm thinking about is that you're trying to get a clearer picture so that we can go on ahead and recycle better, right, also?
Yeah.
Right? Now, have you honestly looked also into that company that's down there in Florida that's worldwide now? And they are going on and cleaning up the oceans, okay, with plastics. And they're utilizing any kind of plastic. They're not just going along with a clear plastic. We're cleaning up everything. Now, what I'm saying is, if we can go on ahead and partner up with those people too, since they're doing it worldwide, bring that kind of process here, so that we don't only have just the clear bottles. We can go on ahead and process any kind of plastic that we have. I do it myself. I like to go on ahead and recycle all the time. I take my stuff down to Fort Carson. It's cheap for me. I just load it in the truck and take it on down there.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because we've been working closely. We have a member of staff for the utilities department that focuses on conservation, and she's really excited about this idea too. But at the end of the day, we have to balance between supporting local businesses, right? And what the plan is to have all the different local trash hauling companies make a proposal, and at the end of the day, we're going to choose the best one. And it's going to be based on a variety of factors that include price, that include quality of service, which is what you're talking about. Right. If there's a company that comes in and has that plastic recycling program and the other ones don't, that's going to be a big issue that's that's going to be in favor of that company. And so we're going to use all those to pick the absolute best one.
Okay. How do we go about partnering up with somebody like that from that company, like let's say in Florida? How do we do that?
It would probably have to be one of those trash companies would have to have that partnership.
And they'd have to do the partnering up with them.
Right.
We don't have any say-so in that.
No.
Right.
Okay.
We can just say that that's something that's important to us, right?
Yeah.
And if they provide it, and some of them might be, right? I don't know. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Mr. Rico.
One quick question. Excuse me. Should this come to fruition?
Yeah.
And it will include trash and recycling. How would that affect the local recycling area that the city of Fountain is running at the moment?
Yeah. That's a great question. You want me to take that one? Sure.
Yeah, we've actually thought about that in our facilities plan. And the plan is this wouldn't affect that whatsoever. What will affect that more is what the future of Lorraine would be, and where we could ultimately move that to possibly a bigger location because of the success of it. But this would not affect us in closing that whatsoever. It would still remain just as it is.
Have we gotten to the stage where we've looked at
how will we collect the money? Can the city collect the money and then pay the company, or do we have to bill it? And the reason I ask this question, as a former business manager, if I can get you as the city to collect the money, that's way cheaper for me, and I'm gonna give you as the city a better price.
Yeah. That's an issue that's been discussed internally. And where we've sort of landed is it's going to be more efficient for us to make the trash companies handle the accounts. So the idea is when we switch over, that if you have company A and we've gone with company B, you've got to switch your account to company B. We could do that, but it would probably, we'd have to run it through our utilities department. That would be the only ones that could handle it. But it may take an infrastructure upgrade to handle the accounts. I mean, it would be more personnel. We could potentially charge an administration fee to do that. But I mean, your point is well taken. That
Everybody's got a utility bill.
Yeah, but we don't pay, not everybody uses a fountain.
Yeah.
Right.
Water, gas, or electric.
So it wouldn't be a one-to-one switch over either. It wouldn't be everyone that's got a
Have any
utilities account,
Okay.
right? And what we've talked a little bit, sort of an informal relationship with like Waste Connections on Link Road, and their accounts are set up, and so it wouldn't take them much to increase the volume of their accounts. So I don't believe their cost would increase because they're still handling accounts of people outside the city anyway. And they just would get more accounts. So I don't believe that it would increase costs for the providers that significantly. I mean, it certainly would if we were doing it, because what we would tell them is, well, if we were handling the accounts, we'd make you pay for it. And we charge a city fee to handle our costs, and that would probably be a wash. So I think it's just the simpler and easier way to just let them handle the accounts is what we've decided.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Corey.
Ms. Thompson?
I know I've talked to you about this, but I think it would be kind of exciting if we could, within the system of negotiations, talk about 2 or 3 times that the citizens could have a pickup day that would be their choice. So they wouldn't have to wait for senior citizen pickup day or spring cleanup day or fall cleanup day. They could just call whenever they had something that they needed picked up, and they would have a certain number of times for that address. I know a company, a friend of mine, they just did it in theirs. And when she called up, they were like, oh, thank you, Mrs. So-and-so, this is your second time this year. You have 2 more times left. So to me, that's a savings too, and a convenience for the citizens that have large items to get rid of. They don't have to try to find a truck or somebody to pick it up. They can just, get it out to the curb. So I think that would be something I'd like to see thrown out there and considered in the scope of things also.
That's almost one that I probably should put under the pros, because that's an idea that is basically that will be in there, that we've decided would be such a value to our citizens that we can put that in the scope. That's something that we're going to ask for.
And I think the reduction in cost would be really helpful to our senior citizens and our people that are on very tight incomes, as different things you can't control go up, groceries, gas, and things that, if they could get a reduction in this, I think it would be a big help.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Thanks. And so this is just really an informational. We'll get more into the weeds of that stuff with the Road Focus Group.
Yeah.
Because they've done a lot of the work around kind of all of this.
Yeah,
and they'll have better answers.
And obviously the council, I would hope that you would come to that meeting. It's to the public, and public, I'd hope you would come. And so the next time I may be in front of council is with that resolution to approve going forward with it.
So let's say we do the resolution then August.
Sure.
But
I'm
I'm just trying to get a gauge. What would be the timeline then?
And then the state law requires 6 months worth of notice before we require moving, before it's mandated. Our transition window would be much longer than that. And so we were talking within the last couple of days about trying our best to coordinate it with Fort Carson, so that our start dates would be very similar, and so that we could get basically both of those linked together and use the economies of scale that basically one provider could to bid on both projects, and knowing that they had both contracts could get a much lower price for everybody.
Yeah.
And so the timing may work out to coordinate those together. And so we would be looking at potentially starting the transition window of a year, starting in January, or a smaller transition window starting in August of next year, that basically by January 1st of 2021 would be the mandatory switch date.
Okay.
But the hope would be that the price would be so good that everyone would want to switch anyways, and that January 1st date wouldn't be much of an issue, that the price we could start giving people would be an incentive enough to switch over.
Okay. Okay, one more question?
Just quickly to go along with Councilmember Thompson's about Senior Citizens Day. Being a military community, we've got a lot of people moving in and out. Once you move in and out, you're generating a lot of boxes, a lot of trash, et cetera. If we could work that into the scope also, that would be helpful to be able to, hey, I'm moving, I'm done unpacking, I need all this cardboard and stuff got out of here.
Yeah. I think that wraps in with exactly what we'll ask for, those big item pickups or big quantity pickups.
Okay.
Covered. We just want to make sure we don't need a resolution, we don't need buts, just so you're all aware. We're going to be moving forward with this on putting out RFIs, so requests for information from these companies. We have to do that to be able to bring specific information. So just so everyone's aware, we're going to move forward with that as soon as we can put those together and get those out.
Okay. All right, thanks to the Road Focus Group and Troy for really working on this. Okay, item 9E. Informational overview of the intergovernmental support agreements. I have Scott and John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. First of all, it's always hard to follow Troy. You can tell he feels pretty darn comfortable in front of a courtroom. So
yeah,
he's great with this. I wanted to just briefly, if I could, just first of all let the council know the City of Fountain's a member of the Association of Defense Communities. And about a year and a half ago, I was on a phone call with one of the Assistant Secretaries of Defense over facilities. And one of the issues that he brought up when he was talking to a huge group of us on the phone about what communities can do to really BRAC-proof their communities, if there really is such a thing as BRAC-proofing. But one of the things that was very important to them was being able to show at some point some resiliency in that installation, and in particular, the relationships that installation has and the reliance that installation has on the local community. And at the time, one of the concepts that he brought up was this concept of this intergovernmental support agreement, these IGSAs. And at the time, it didn't really resonate on exactly what those were, and there weren't a lot of communities who were very familiar with that at all. Let me fast forward a year and a half, and not too long ago, John was at an ADC conference, and one of the issues that came up were these IGSAs. And essentially, IGSAs are these intergovernmental support agreements, and so we might think of them as an IGA, an intergovernmental type agreement that we're very familiar with, but it's the same type of agreement, but between us and a military installation. So in this case, likely for us, just because of proximity, the biggest and probably the best promoter of IGSAs is the Army, and so that would be Fort Carson. And so at that point, we began exploring what these IGSAs could potentially do for us. So I'm going to hand it over to John briefly. He's going to talk a little bit about the path that we've been on right now, working on some IGSA concepts with Fort Carson, and potentially the benefits that would mean to us and our community as well. So with that, John, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay. So good evening, Mayor and Council and the public. So to follow Scott's intro here, kind of a little bit more about what an intergovernmental support agreement is essentially from the military perspective, a lot of the services that are received on installations are done through contracts. And so these contracts have very deliberate and often very long processes that can be quite costly to the installations. And so they have found through recent legislation the ability to enter into these agreements, government-to-government agreements, where they can receive the same services or even superior services from their local community. And because they enter into an agreement with the local community, they don't have to necessarily follow some of the contracting processes, and they end up with same or better service at a significantly reduced cost. And so it's a win for the installation. The installation gets the high quality service they need to support their mission in getting their service members out the door to serve our nation. And then the community wins because the community receives a benefit from providing that service to the installation. So some examples of this that we've seen, and these are happening all across the country now, and the Army is really has been doing a lot of these. Some examples are like bulk purchasing agreements. An installation buys salt and sand during the winter, and so does the local community. So let's go in together and let's purchase it in bulk, and both get a cost savings. Grounds maintenance. The installations have huge contracts to have the contractors go on and cut the grass and control the weeds. Same thing happens in the communities. So the community provides that service and gets a win out of that by through some, for instance, equipment purchases. So in order for the local community to provide the service and grounds maintenance, they have to purchase equipment. The equipment is purchased under the funding that comes through the governmental support agreement. The community provides the grounds maintenance service to the installation, but when that equipment's down, they go right into their own community and they take care of everything within their community with all the new equipment that was purchased through the IGSA funding. So another win-win for both. So, and you see a couple of the others there. Stray animal control, refuse removal. We're going to talk a bit more about that in following Troy's great presentation. Basically, these agreements end up being big win-wins for the installation and the local community for a variety of reasons. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So why would we do an IGSA? Well, first is that, like I've given you a couple examples, could serve as a reduced cost to citizen services through contract savings and economy of scale, as Troy mentioned here. For an example with refuse, which I'll get into a little bit more, if we enter into an IGSA with Fort Carson, where we are essentially responsible to handle their solid waste removal, recycling, and sorting activities there, and then we partner that up with a single hauler program, and that all comes under one large contract that we put out, RFP, we could find a significant cost savings to the citizens. This is a very large contract for a company to manage to provide those services, and that would drive down the cost at a great savings to our community, so a definite win. New equipment and facilities that benefit the local community, so I just gave you the example of grounds maintenance and the purchasing of new equipment. There's one community that's leaned into this very big. It's Leesville, Louisiana, which is population 8,000, and was actually my first posting as a young lieutenant in the Army. And little Leesville, Louisiana has done these support agreements, and they were able to fund and build a new city hall with the proceeds of the support agreements that they have with Fort Polk. So equipment and facilities. Next, and we talked a little bit about BRAC proofing when Scott gave his intro. These types of agreements really intertwine the installation and the community. And we know here that we've always been great supporters of Fort Carson and all the various military installations here. You as council just articulated that in your strategy that just came out, that one of the enduring interests of Fountain is always to be thoughtful and mindful of and include the military in what we do here. And so entering into these agreements further entwines that. Additionally, if there was rounds of BRAC or looking for realignment and closure, communities that have agreements that are providing these services and demonstrating something that's tangible in service to the installation, really serves to benefit and help insulate and protect that community a little bit, as opposed to others who really don't have that type of relationship with their local military installation. And then the last is, when we do these support agreements and particularly enter into contracting, we have to manage that. And so there would be associated administrative and management fees that could come along, with these support agreements that would benefit the city and be a supplement to the general fund as we execute the IGSAs. So. So we've been talking with Fort Carson in particular about these support agreements for several months now. And with Scott's permission, we've sat down and negotiated with several different departments over at Fort Carson. And we've kind of narrowed down a couple of real viable options for support agreements in the future. You'll see there it says current potential IGSA coordination. So right now, we've actually put together an RFI that's out right now on pest control services for Fort Carson. So this one here, we'd enter a intergovernmental support agreement with Fort Carson to provide pest control services to them. We have all of their requirements, and then we would find a contractor to provide that service, and we would manage that contract on behalf of the base. And so we have an RFI out right now to get pricing information and see what local pest control providers could do to meet that contract and give us the numbers we need to further negotiate with Fort Carson if we chose to go forward. It's another point, to make that these contracts, we can look for and benefit the local business community here as well when we're doing these agreements with Fort Carson and we're looking for contracts. Potentially there could be a company or a business that's right here in the Fountain area that could provide that service. And so it also supports our economy. So, the real big one is solid waste. This piggybacks on Troy's presentation on single hauler. So this is a very large project and agreement with Fort Carson that would really stand this program up between the city of Fountain and the installation. So this would be to provide refuse removal and recycling and sort activities at Fort Carson's very large contract. And we're actually working through an RFP right now on that to get some costing and some information. In fact, Troy, and I really appreciate Troy's work on these IGSAs. He's been a tremendous resource, and we've also benefited from a local government, a Veterans Local Government Management Fellow, Luis Cibrian, who just retired from the Air Force and is a contracting specialist. So he knows all the ins and outs of federal contracting and everything. He's been a tremendous asset as well. And so we're working through the RFP process on refuse and waste, and we're actually moving forward to roll in the single hauler. So as Troy mentioned, when we do the public listening sessions and open houses, we would actually have some financial information back from contractors who could provide the service here in Fountain and in Fort Carson. The last one that we're really looking and talking with Fort Carson with is called is a small projects IGSA. This one's a little bit unique. The Army has not done one like this. Fort Carson has a budget to do smaller projects on the installation. This ranges everything from retrofitting dryers and barracks from gas to electric, or putting in setting up a wall inside an existing building, to building a small building. So it's anything for them that falls between $2,500 and $250,000 for them. They have a sizable budget for this, but because of the contracting process and the rules that they have to follow, it takes them forever to do these projects, and they have a huge backlog. And so they're very interested in seeing, can the city of Fountain help them through an intergovernmental support agreement to provide these small projects under this particular budget. So we are looking into that one, but we're not leaning as far forward in negotiating with Fort Carson on that one. We're really focusing on the pest control and the refuse initially. But definitely small projects is on the table, and Fort Carson has a really, really big interest in that one. Some others potential in the future, we've talked to them a little bit about GIS services. They have a lot of the same needs that on the installation that our GIS provides here in the city. And then the bulk purchasing, it just kind of makes sense that if we're purchasing asphalt, for instance, and they're purchasing asphalt, perhaps we could partner up and do that with them together. So that just give you an idea of the types of things that we've been negotiating for the last couple months with Fort Carson staff to see what's in the art of the possible and what is something we could actually put together to bring back to all of you and maybe enter into one of these support agreements. Are there any questions about that? About the
just on the small project?
Yes.
So they could get it done faster if we're helping them? Is that?
We could get it, yes, we could get it done much faster, because right now, if they have a small project, they have to follow that contracting process.
Okay.
So they have to go through all the bureaucracy to initiate the project, to go outsource the contractors and, do all that. If they had a support agreement with us where we agreed to provide projects within that price range, and then we had maybe, an already vetted set of contractors who can provide a variety of different types of services.
So we would be the go-through, basically.
They would just contact us. They'd say, hey, we need a wall put up in this building. They already have done all the engineer design, so they're ready to go. And we would look at that, and we'd have our contractors say, yep, we can do it. And we would just go out there and we'd knock it out. And for Fort Carson, they just cut all that bureaucracy.
In time, okay.
So it's a
All
it's a
right.
big efficiency win for them, and it's a benefit for us for all those other reasons that I've mentioned.
Right.
Okay, and then, yes?
I have two questions. One of the frustrations that I've always heard from contractors within the community in dealing with Fort Carson or any military base, and the guy's nodding his head behind you, knows what I'm going to say.
It's about to come, yeah.
Huh?
Getting
Is
paid, right?
how long it takes.
Yeah,
They can't wait 60, 90, 120 days to get paid.
Yes.
So how is that going to help them?
So-
Because we don't want to be put in a bad place with people in our community.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, we're like, "Ugh, well,
Yes.
sorry.
So the way that they would be paid is that, so we're the contract manager, right? So when a contract of service is provided, the contractor would submit an invoice to the city of Fountain for us to pay them. Then we, in turn, will submit an invoice under the support agreement to the installation to be paid. They'll have an account where they will have 30 days to do a funds transfer back to the city of Fountain. They have 30 days to make that payment through the Defense Finance and Accounting Service. And once on the 31st day, if they have not paid, the payment begins accruing interest, to which they would have to pay to us.
50,000 to have to lay
So-
out for us would be a big amount of money.
Right, so there's no, a lot of the contractors through the regular contracting process, they have a system and a management system called Wide Area Workflow they'd have to go into and submit, and it's very bureaucratic again, and it can be slow and.
That's okay, just make
very
it simple, John. Don't get too complicated.
Here, what they've told us is that this is a transfer account, 30 days. It gets wired from
And then-
DFAS, from
And then,
Defense.
but they would let us know before we paid them if the work was acceptable.
Yes, and that would be all arranged within the contract and the agreements. Right now, in the work statements that we've received from Fort Carson, that we're actually, out researching the contractors, we have an entire, quality control process and program and a way to adjudicate, if there's an issue with billing or, whatever. But we would be managing all that. If Fort Carson has any issues, they'd call us.
That was my question. So say we went with the single hauler system, and for some reason they couldn't provide enough trash trucks that the people were allowed to go on base. That would fall back on us.
Under the agreement, it would, for us to, resolve the contract, but.
And in speaking with their representative that handles their relationship with their current provider of waste services, for example, they would still have a person on base that would discuss the contact directly with the provider. And so we would only get involved if there was a serious problem, right? And so he would handle, we've got extra rounds at this firing range, can you pick these up, right? That kind of stuff happens all the time. But then if they said, hey, we've called, the trash company, and they haven't returned our calls within a couple weeks, right? We haven't heard from them. What's going on? Then it would take a call from us, who actually runs their contract, to say, hey, and get serious about getting Fort Carson the service that they need. But day-to-day stuff, we wouldn't touch.
Troy's exactly right. And so there's going to be a quality control program, and Fort Carson actually, they have a pretty structured process in the way they identify these discrepancies and everything. And the way we've written the RFIs and the RFPs right now is it ensures that any problem we will know about, but as well the Fort Carson representative as well. So it's really a partnership between Fountain and Fort Carson to handle things like that. But day to day, as Troy said, it's just really a transaction between the Fort Carson folks and their installation management and then the contractor. So we would only get involved if it's a big deal, but we will still know about it.
Because they don't want to lose control either, right? They don't want to have to go through Fountain for every little thing, and we don't want to have to deal with every little thing.
Right.
But when there's a problem, they want to be able to have it get dealt with. And right now they have the bureaucracy that they have to deal with, and we don't. and we can get things done.
And
that's what they
yeah.
would want us to do.
Right, and so quality, and we want to know that, right? Because at the end of the day, those agreements, it's even, besides a formal agreement to provide services, it's political, it's relationships as well. So, if we go forward and do this with Fort Carson, we want to be a true, and good partner, and we'll follow through on that. So we would sure we have the mechanisms in place to manage that. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Now, on these people that are going to be getting contracts with you folks, do they put in a bid for this?
Yes.
So that people won't be crawling all over each other, just to go to work for you guys?
Yep.
Or what's
Yep.
Okay.
One of the requirements, sir, of this process, that's required, that the military is requiring, is that we have to use our competitive bid process. And so we'll use the standard process we use here in the city of Fountain. We have a contracting process that we use through BidNet, very standard city policy.
Right.
And so companies will have equal opportunity to submit information under, in a request for information, or make an actual proposal for a contract in a fair and equitable way. And then
Okay.
the city would decide, who would be awarded the contract.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, excuse me. One quick question. In doing this, in setting up your agreements, would Fountain, I know you'd work together with a COR, contracting officer representative, or a contracting officer in doing this? Because when it comes to the rules of.
Yeah, it's not a contract. So
It's not a contract, but it's an agreement. They gotta be oversight. I just set up one before I retired with Toby on the Army Depot. And it's basically the same thing. You do have a site over.
We here?
No.
You are right, sir, that
oversight there.
there is
You
an
have
over,
to do
there is
that.
an
That's by
overlap.
law.
But the,
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and keep moving on with the
Yeah,
Okay.
presentation.
I'm sorry. So,
There,
yes.
there is an oversight. It's not, the installations are not, the Army's not running them through their contracting offices, but it's very similar.
Similar.
So instead of a contracting officer representative, they would have a Fort Carson representative under the IGSA, but it's very similar, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Any other
Scott,
questions?
nope.
Okay.
Scott?
So, just to wrap this up, I think, last thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned, and I've got it up here. Right now, John is overseeing these three areas, as you know, communications, city strategic plan, and our military partnerships. And so, one of the things I think that's important to us as a city is how do we manage this? And essentially, we're just going to use our existing infrastructure right now, especially as we dip our toe into these waters. It's new waters for us, but we're designing this so that it's scalable from the inside. So, as John mentioned, we have Luis Cibrian, who's helping us out right now as a fellow, but we're going to probably at some point, as we start taking off with some of these contracts, that piece over there with under the military partnerships, we're probably going to need to add a contract officer, someone who really, just some of the questions tonight, there are some complexities with these agreements that we want to stay on top of. And so at some point, we will probably be coming back to the city council to restructure that department. If we need to add an employee, of course, funded through these IGSAs. And so that wouldn't be something that I'm bringing to you guys until we have the money coming in through these IGSAs. But it's just an important point I wanted to make, that also allows us to be scalable, add, subtract, whatever, based on the success of these IGSAs. And then finally, those folks can also be used for other things that we've talked about internally, and I think even with the council, as far as things like grant management and administration and those kind of things we know we already have a need for. It's just sort of a secondary benefit for something like this. But I just wanted to kind of close with that, just so the council can see right now at this point, John is sort of the tip of the spear. Of course, he's working closely with Todd and Troy and Luis as well, but just want to give the council an overview of that as well. And that's it. That's all I have. Any other questions for me?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So when I guess the only question is when might we see these things kind of start taking
Thank
shape?
you. So here's where we are. One of the reasons we wanted to come to this tonight to the council is we wanted to be able to give again an overview. I know I've shared this with the council before via emails, in person, just to give a council a sense of what these are. But I wanted to make sure that we were able to answer any broad questions, because really within the next couple council meetings, we'll probably see a first proposal come back on the pest control, which is sort of the low-hanging, smallest type of contract there is. We just want to be really deliberate the way we step into these. So I think you're going to see in the next couple meetings. Troy, does that sound right?
End of July is
Okay.
when we have control negotiated, so be ready to do it in August, and then right after that, in August, September timeframe, come in with the big waste, refuse removal exit. So these are right around the corner.
But part of the problem with, not the problem, but this is, Fort Carson is stepping into this new as well. And so they are accounting for a lot of time to get the actual IGSAs approved. And so when we're talking about pest control, that technical contract doesn't begin until next April. But right now, we're on pretty tight timelines to get the numbers to Fort Carson so we can go through the process for the first time. And then once we get this through pest control, we'll sort of have an idea of what the timeline is, because we're all kind of in these new waters, and this pest control will be a great one to really understand the timelines, because neither of us really understand the timelines, and I think we're giving it a lot of cushion to make sure it works. But so that would be, we wouldn't start receiving money from the IGSAs until next April, but we're pretty tight on getting it right now because of the way the timeline backs up and what they have to do to get these approved.
Okay.
To make this work for us, when you do the pest control contract with them, then we wouldn't renegotiate supposedly whoever's doing our pest control, and hopefully get a better deal with the city because they're doing Fort Carson and the city. Is that the potential?
We have the option of doing that. Talking with Craig Williams, we don't have a lot. We don't have a lot of that kind of stuff for pest control, so I'm not sure it would make a ton of sense to do that. But we would.
Todd.
But that's an option. I mean, that's one of the values of doing it, is we're going to look at it and we can either choose to or choose not to, whatever is the best interest of the city.
So there's really a whole lot of options, and like when you look at the refuse, there's a whole bunch of them, where under a large contract, you'd ask for a lot of public contribution, essentially, the contribution to road maintenance, free pickup of city facilities. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that can be built into this, and we're really just in discussion of all that. Right now, we're just trying to get to the point where we have solid numbers from contractors so we can really negotiate with Fort Carson with, a number that's acceptable to them, and then make sure that we get a win. Because we would never do these in the first place if it wasn't going to be a win for us.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. A lot of information tonight, so item 10, correspondence, comments, and ex officio reports. I'll start with Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I wanted to mention, and Councilmember Applegate already mentioned, we had CML last week. I thought it was a great conference, had some great sessions in it, focused on transportation funding ideas. A lot of the things, by the way, it was great to sit in on that and hear that these guys are already doing all those things and exploring those. Just a lot of different things, events, management, things that can help us in our operation. It was a great opportunity.
Great. Todd? Troy, anything else? Commander, anything from PD?
No, sir.
Curtis? John, anything further?
No, sir, nothing.
Paul?
Nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. Ms. Hoffman?
Just quick update, we did have to cancel our movie night in the park scheduled for last Friday due to lightning, so we're trying to reschedule it now for July 5th. So hopefully everybody can make it out there at Metcalf.
Okay, great. I'll go through council one more time. Mayor Pro Tem, anything?
Nothing.
Mr. Geek? Mr. Applegate?
Nothing.
Mr. Cope?
Nothing here.
Mr. Lauer?
Nothing here.
Ms. Thompson? Okay, we do have executive session. Who wants to request that?
I'll request it.
Okay.
I'd like to request an executive session pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-424E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and/or instructing negotiators.
Okay. We'll need a motion to go into, or we need to make a motion, right?
Yes, please.
Mr. Lauer?
Move to go into executive session as requested.
And Mr. Geek?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay. So do I adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Council meeting's adjourned. We'll see you on July 9th.